Designed by Jack Diamond of Diamond & Schmidt, construction on the retail pavilion at Southbrook was begun in 2005 and opened on June 21st, 2008. The building is LEED Gold certified. LEED stands for the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. This includes practices in water conservation, energy efficiency, the use of sustainable building materials, and many more. Southbrook's 75 acres of estate vineyards are certified organic by EcoCert and certified biodynamic by Demeter International. Hello everybody, we're here in the winery where the magic happens. So I just wanted to show you, really where things really happen in terms of the actual winemaking. So we've got stainless steel vats here, stainless steel storage tanks here, and on the other side we'll show you in a second big oak vats as well that we'll make different wines in. So this is kind of where this is really the most important, but perhaps the less glamorous side. The winemaking team, Anne, Sperling, Emily, Casey, they are really hard grafters. You're getting your hands dirty every single day in making wine, and it's something that perhaps has romantic ideas of what it's like to be a winemaker. And it's romantic in a certain way, but it's really, really, really damn hard work. And this is where they're coming to work every day and making the delicious wine that you're enjoying. So here is, they're tucked away for the winter, but here are just a few things that are very important in the initial winemaking process. We've got, this is the sorting table. So grapes will be brought in bin from the vineyard, or whether they're coming from the truck from other organic vineyards around the area. Coming in, they're sorted all by hand here after being picked by hand. Go up the conveyor belt here and into this machine, which is a destemmer. So bunches of grapes will go up into here. We've got some sort of footage of it going for you now, but it's basically it shakes around, removes the stems, and just leaves berries, at which point you can then sort those berries and just make sure there really isn't any rocks or anything else that you wouldn't want going into the winemaking process, into the tank. So here we have two bladder presses. We've got the main one here and then its little brother over there. So these are basically a bladder press is, you can see the circular drum here. What will happen is sorted grapes will go up the top into the hopper, into the drum, and on the inside of the drum there's a bladder which is inflated pneumatically, and the grapes are crushed from the inside of the drum. You can see the little slots here. Inside of the drum by the bladder, and it's a very soft, very gentle way to press grapes, whereas historically, going back hundreds of years, we use what's called a screw press, which, as you can imagine, involves a screw, and it's a lot more forceful. It really is a lot more aggressive, and that can affect the flavor in terms of your tannin, in terms of your contact with the skins. So these are used to get juice and then get pumice, and that's what you take into the tank to begin fermenting. Whether it's white or red, this is sort of where things get turned into juice, and then they will go straight through into the winery. So now we're up on the catwalk, which we use to be able to see down into our main fermenters, both stainless steel on my right and oak on my left. These are both in the sort of 4,000, 5,000 liter range. These guys here primarily, if we want to take a look in here, cameraman. These are primarily used for your bigger reds, so your Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, that kind of thing, things that will eventually go into oak barrels up there. These rings that you can see, these are actually used to propel coolant through. So one of the main things that we can remember from science class back in high school was fermentation gives off alcohol, which we like, CO2, which gives bubbles to your drink sometimes, and heat. And so one way to control fermentation is to control the level of heat that you get in your vessel. So those rings will have coolant put through them to cool down the wine that's being fermented, and therefore slowing down the fermentation, which you would want for a multitude of different reasons, and depending really on the wine. We can do that in these guys here as well. These are stainless steel. You can see the jacket that kind of goes around the outside there. It's the same thing, just a slightly different design. The thing that you can also see with this is it can be sealed. And so these are used for whites and lighter reds, things like Gamay, the odd Pinot Noirs, Weigelt, that kind of thing, will also be done in these stainless steel vats. So it's something where you really want to keep, if the wine is a really kind of fruit-forward wine, something that's got a lot of fruitiness to it, you would do it in here because the surface is not going to kind of change the wine at all. This will give a little bit of subtle flavor and soften the wine a little bit. Mostly the oak characteristics that you're going to get in wine are going to come if you put it in oak barriques like you see down there. So here we are in one of the sort of alleyways of barrels that we have. This is where we do all of our oak aging. So we don't have a cellar. You know, so traditionally in Europe you would go down into the ground because that's really the only place that gets that cool and that sort of consistent temperature that you'd want to age wine. But we just have it here in sort of the north side of the winery. We use, at this point, 100% French oak barrels. We have played around with American, Eastern European, and Canadian. But really, when it comes down to it, at least, especially for our style of wine, are a little bit more subtle. We don't want quite as heavy an oak imprint. French is really the way to go. One thing that people we get all the time is, you know, can we have your barrels for everything from putting beer in to putting coffee in to using as planters? And these things are they're really quite precious. I mean, after you use them for 6, 7, 8, 10 times, they become less and less useful, and then you can talk about it then. But especially a new French oak barrel will run us upwards of $3,000 Canadian. So in terms of the cost that goes into making wine, new French oak is quite a big part of that cost in terms of what goes into your bottle of wine. But really, when it comes to oak, French, again, at least for us, is really the way to go. If you're making bourbon, or there's some other regions around the world that can use something like American oak, which is much stronger, that's great. But for us, we use Central France, Vosges, Burgundian oak pretty much across the board at this point. So one barrel is about between 225 and 250 liters, and yeah, so we have quite a few here. We don't put everything in oak. There will be varieties like Riesling, for example, that will not see any oak at all. But otherwise, the majority of our stuff will go into French oak like this. So behind me here we have some pallets of bottles. We don't have a bottling line here at Southbrook. We're just too small. Really, only the biggest wineries around the world and biggest breweries will have their own bottling line. It's very expensive and takes up a lot of real estate to have your own bottling line. What will happen is there's a couple of different companies in Niagara. They will literally back an 18-wheeler in here, and that 18-wheeler has been retrofitted with a full bottling line, where we supply the wine from the tanks, we supply the labels, we supply the bottles. We basically just slot everything in. It's a little bit more than just hitting a button, but effectively hit the button and the bottling line, the mobile bottling line, will do all the work for us without us having, again, a separate wing, a separate building. We're really only bottling 10 to 12 days a year. And so it just wouldn't be efficient for us to have a whole bottling line. A lot of our glass is recycled, so we get it from Quebec, from where it gets recycled. From Canadian, a lot of your beer store returns will get turned into, not 100%, but a lot of our bottles that we use, especially our clear ones here that we'll use for a lot of our wines, will be recycled glass, which I think is pretty cool, and just another little bit of sustainability that we're trying to do here at Southbrook. So we're standing here in one of our plots of Cabernet Sauvignon. I just wanted to show you guys what it's obviously, we're in the middle of winter here, not in full bloom, but it's kind of pretty in its own way. So after harvest, we will go in and prune everything back and kind of cut everything back on the vine. Obviously the leaves and everything will fall off naturally during fall. But what we want is the vines to be able to be nice and clumped, be pruned back, and so they survive the ice and the snow. One of the reasons that we can grow grapes here in Niagara versus say up in Toronto or north of Toronto, at least more easily down here, is that it is a little bit warmer, a few degrees warmer here and there, and that really makes all the difference for Vitis vinifera, which is the species of wine grape, to survive our cold winters, because we are just about the coldest place on earth to make wine in the entire world. It really is. I don't think enough praise goes to our wineries, our winemaking teams that we have to deal with. It's about zero right now. If it gets down to zero in Burgundy, they start lighting fires and going to church to pray. Whereas this is not a kind of a warm day. My cameraman here doesn't even have his coat on, and we survive and can still make really delicious wine. So it's sometimes you'll see in places like Prince Edward County, where it's much smaller wine region, but they still make grapes, but it is a little bit colder. They'll do what's called burying their vines. So they will literally take the vines off the trellis, lay them along the ground, and before frost sets in, they will put soil over said vines, and it just insulates them to make sure they're really not going to freeze and get really any ice damage. That's really the thing. We can get up to about minus 22, minus 24 and be okay. Anything below that or heavy ice and not so good. But we're usually okay here in Niagara.